behalf of Meherchand Mahajan DAV College, awarded grade A by NAC, a premier institute of North India, which has been providing holistic education to women for more than half a century, and the internal quality assurance cell of the college, I heartily welcome you to this webinar on environmental awareness, green audit, and its relevance. In keeping with the spirit of the institution, where social responsibility is considered quintessentially complementary to imparting of education, and where the incessant endeavor is not only to generate awareness, but to enthuse all the stakeholders towards a practical involvement in order to instill in them a zeal to tackle issues of national as well as global concerns. This webinar raises and promises to deliberate upon environmental issues of vital significance, which are looming large at humanity in general. Located in a beautiful city, we are a visibly green, environmentally conscious, and conscientious institution, fully cognizant of its responsibility. We are forever committed to ourselves keeping and motivating others to keep their environs clean and green. Our efforts under Swachhata initiatives were crowned with the highest honor of being adjudged the cleanest institution in the whole country. Cleanliness drives and students' activities in this direction are regular features here. With the futuristic vision and foresight of our dynamic principal, Dr. Nisha Bhargav, we have accomplished significant regenerative measures such as rainwater harvesting units, solar energy panels, biogas units, vermicomposting, planting of medicinal herbs, and frequent tree plantation drives to replenish the green cover. We are also the first academic institution to have real-time air quality monitoring system. In the current scenario, when certification and accreditation have become the norms, the relevance of peer evaluation and formal audits of the institutional efforts by outside agencies cannot be overstated. To guide us on this path as a beacon light, we have with us the gracious presence of Mr. Gaurav Raja Prakash, a UNESCO award-winning expert in the field of environment conservation and a partner in the Ridge Environment Consultants. He has extensive experience as an expert in waste management and water conservation. I would now request our principal, Dr. Bhargav, to accord a formal welcome to our honored guest.
Thank you, Mrs. Sukhpreet Bhatia, Mr. Gaurav Bhatia, Mr. Gaurav Raja Prakash, our guest speaker for today, Dr. Vibha Sharma, IQAC Chief Coordinator, Dr. Bindu Sharma, IQAC Coordinator, staff members, and very dear students. I welcome you all on this webinar on green audit organized by the IQAC of the college. The theme of the webinar is environmental awareness, green audit, and its relevance. This is a very relevant topic today because many of our activities are damaging to the environment and we are taking more from Mother Earth than we are giving back. Our institution has taken many green initiatives like Mrs. Sukhpreet has just mentioned, like rainwater harvesting system, solar power, biogas plant, sewage treatment plant, tree plantation, vermicomposting, recycling of waste, making organic manure, and so on. Consequently, the institution has been getting a number of national and state level awards and commendations in past few years. It includes the award of first rank in India in Swachh Sarvekshan 2018 under residential college category. Yet we have to take up the green audit. So I think this is a very opportune time to organize this webinar. And I'm sure that today's lecture will be very beneficial to all the stakeholders of the institution. So I appreciate this initiative of IQAC. I'm grateful to our guest speaker, Mr. Gaurav Raja Prakash, who has spared his valuable time for us, and he has come to enlighten us on various aspects of green audit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. I would request all the participants to please have their videos on so that we can have a picture of the webinar for record. Thank you, ma'am. I would take this opportunity to introduce our resource person to the virtual gathering. An engineering graduate from the prestigious Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, BITS Pilani, a master's degree holder in business administration and a silver medal holder transport planning economist from the Institute of Rail Transport under the Ministry of Indian Railways, he is a firm believer in an endless pursuit and dissemination of knowledge. As a keen environmentalist, he has held various strategic and reputable positions, such as a national consultant with the United Nations for public-private partnerships and projects, and a scientist with Government of India, from where he moved on in order to focus on community development through his non-profit NGO Earthlings Habitat Society, and initiated a mission on rainwater harvesting, stormwater management, and several waste management cum recycling projects. He believes that projects that are environmentally sustainable can only be financially sustainable, can only be possible if they are financially sustainable. With his wide horizons of an interdisciplinary background, ranging from government sector, law, private industries, NGOs, and entrepreneurship, he brings in unique insights and a holistic approach by interlinking the projects with various environmental, social, and financial aspects. He has been among one of the few experts for personal rapid transit systems in India and has been instrumental in implementing more than 100 successful community and infrastructure projects in urban and rural areas in India and abroad. His exhaustive expertise and laudable initiatives have brought him numerous awards and accolades. Initially, he has been recognized among India's top 50 brightest young climate leaders by the British Council, Government of Britain, and has been a fellow with the Urban Habitat Forum. For his contribution to environment conservation, he has been felicitated with the Professional Excellence Award for Water Conservation by the 10th World Aqua Congress in 2016 and honored by the government of Uttarakhand in 2017. No wonder then that he has been a resource person at several national and international fora, including the World Bank, government platforms, civil society groups, industry groups, universities, etc. Sir, it is indeed an honor to have you amidst us today, and we are looking forward to benefit tremendously from your proficient guidance and oceanic experience. To establish and emphasize the dire need of resuscitating our environs, I am reminded of these lines by a poet. Once in the midst of a calm night, I woke up to witness a horrible sight. Everything was blurred, something was wrong. They said this was expected since long. Human activities had caused this shift. Positive development had taken an ugly shift. More industries, more colonies, more cars. With latest technology, we had wanted to conquer Mars. We cared little if we created pollution. We always had pretended to talk of a solution. Now all around, there are regretful cries. Wish we had thoughtfully planned this rise. Precious forms of life and greenery are lost. Progress has come at a perilous cost. With these words then, I would invite our worthy resource person, Mr. Gaurav Raja Prakash, to elucidate the various notions of environmental conservation.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Good afternoon, Principal Dr. Nisha Bhargav. Good afternoon, other members of faculty, staff, and students present in this conference. And I would, before I start, would like to thank you, the Principal Dr. Nisha Bhargav, Dr. Vibha Sharma, and Dr. Gunjan for working back office and organizing this presentation. Thank you, Dr. Sukhpreet. Let me just put on my presentation on the present now button, and then we can begin up. To begin with, I have been reading about MCM DAV College, which obviously I know about is a very prestigious institution. But in addition to that, seeing your initiatives, great, nice initiatives done on environment and green audit, I wanted to take this thing because some of the activities have already been done and your institution is well recognized. But I was trying to take you in the next step in this hierarchy of being more eco-friendly on how to structure your environmental process compliance in a more organized way. But let me just begin with the basics because I am not sure who all are attending this seminar. So, well, to begin with, though Dr. Sukhpreet has very well introduced with me more than what I had expected, I'm Gaurav with an interest in sustainable development and environment and water conservation, and have been associated with the United Nations before starting my own consultancy and non-profit. And apart from that, I'm a national awardee for water conservation. So, basically, this is how I will be going ahead in my presentation. So it will be more of an interactive thing. So first of all, I will be talking about sustainability, on how each step that we are doing, how they are related with sustainability, what is sustainability, and how we can move towards green audit. And what is a green audit? What does it include? What academic institutions can do? And then we can come to question and answers. So question number one is, what is sustainability? Different people have different definitions of it, but in a nutshell, it basically means that meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In addition to natural resources, we also need socio and economic resources. So sustainability is a larger context, and green audit is also a part of this context. So we do individual activities like you have been doing rainwater harvesting, waste management, plantation, cleanliness drives. So, but now is the time to integrate all these little diverse elements in and seeing it in totality, and what we call today is sustainability. So there is obviously sustainability in terms of environment, sustainability in terms of economic and social opportunities. But what we are presently concerned is sustainability in terms of environment. So the initiative of an academic institution or any other organization should be gradually moving from doing small elemental change to an organized change, and then to moving towards the sustainability approach to its existence. So how do we go about it? That's a very important question. How do we integrate the different elements and bring the question into our processes? That's sort of $1 million question, which is currently I will be focusing on. So these green audit is known by various names across the world, depending on countries, depending on whether it is British, Indian, UK, which organization. Some people call it sustainability studies assessment, environmental audit, green audit, energy audit, ecological assessment, life cycle assessments, and so on and so forth. So though the outcomes are slightly different, but the essential core underlying principles remain the same. So now the question comes is, what environment audit or green audit should not be. This would be a very surprising point because we all study that and we all know about things from different way, that this should be done, this should not be done this way, this is what is required, this is what is mandated as per law. But there are certain things which we should be very careful on. Something is not right. So environment audit is not something, this is a small comic diagram. So it says it's okay, the chainsaw runs on biofuel. So the person is cutting a tree and saying the chainsaw is using an eco-friendly fuel and cutting the tree. Well, this is being done in different ways and different institutions. Well, this is not a part of being eco-friendly. There's another term which is going on quite a lot in the world these days. This is called greenwashing. So it is basically spending more time, money, energy to be called green and to be known as green without actually being as green. So this means that we do things to get our rankings up, we do things to get awards, we do things to get some compliances fulfilled, or maybe to show out to the people, but actually we are not green. So that's something called greenwashing. So I would say these two things are definitely not what comes into the paradigm of being called eco-friendly, sustainable, or green. So coming back to our original thing. So once we all have been in our different professions since past many years or decades, but over a period of time, especially in last 50 years, the narrative has basically changed from pollution control to environmental conservation. Way back in 1950s, 1940s, 1960s, not many people used to care about environment, eco-friendly. That was not a buzzword. Gradually, with different national and international initiatives, both at the government and individual level, the initiatives on pollution control starts to come in. Now, this narrative is also changing in last 20, 25, 30 years. And this narrative is changing to environmental conservation. So it may be a possibility that some of you might be thinking, how does this narrative affect us? How does it's relevant to our topic of discussion today? So I would say that let's not go into, before we go into the technical details or academic detail, let us be very simple, look into our lives. We talk about, we all travel in cars. So these days there is new emission standards coming out. They are called BS6 Bharat. Every institution, whether it's private or government, up to a certain level, above a certain level, has a sewerage treatment plant, effluent treatment plant, rainwater harvesting. But right now what is happening, I will just give you an example. Earlier it was just the thing that don't discharge the dirty water out on the open drains, it will create pollution. So that was the narrative being fulfilled way back over 30-20 years. But now the trend that is going on, well, it's definitely not acceptable to pollute the water. Now what the people are recommending or practicing is, how do you recycle the water? So they are going one step ahead. So earlier it was solid waste management. Now it is moving towards zero waste management. So earlier it was, how do we segregate our waste? How do we reduce our waste or recycle it? But now gradually we are shifting to conservation part of the thing. How do we go into zero waste management things? Earlier it was more on, how do we reduce the pollution? So we have this coal powered energy plants by government. Now it is more on solar, biogas and other energy efficient things. So basically the entire definition of how do we go about the approach is changing, and this is a very important factor, and I am re-emphasizing on this thing. And I would say this should be a focus of the university, the college, MCM, DAV, in my personal opinion, that let's move on from pollution to environment conservation, and that would be really a next step into this development. So coming back, well, environmental audit and green audit is now statutory and a legal compliance issue in India as well as outside India. So it is basically a means of assessing your patterns of energy, water, material use and waste. So how do we use our basic energy? It's not about being, it's no rocket science, it's not complementary. If we just go to the basics of whatever discipline we are, each one of us from, on how we are using our lifestyle, that's more important. And then identifying each resource we are using, maybe energy, maybe water, maybe use, and identifying how we can best possible use it, how we can bring efficiency into it and bring resource conservation. So once we talk about auditing, auditing is an attempt to basically provide information on the environmental performances of a company or an organization in this case, and which thus helps in decision making in several cases. So right now what has been done, I would assume, is either a part of fulfilling a legal compliance, say for example, maybe installing a solar, maybe installing a sewage treatment plant, rainwater. But the moment we shift from complying with the legal to bringing it in an essential part of our daily activity, our decision-making process, that's the ultimate goal of the next step of the environmental auditing objective. So, and the most important thing of an audit, as it's with any audit, whether it is a financial audit, that it should be an independent, objective, and credible. That's when it will be successful. So basically, the trend of environmental audit is started around 1970s in Western countries, European countries, and United States. And the first environmental audit in educational institution happened in around 1919, University of California in Los Angeles. And they, in fact, today have a center on sustainability programs. So it's not just a side activity, but it's part of their that's going. In last 10 to 15 years, it has caught up in India as well, as especially once it has been a part of criteria 7 under NAC rating. So lots of academic institutions are also involving themselves in green audit activities. So now the question is, how does it benefit? What's the benefit of green audit? So with every audit, it's basically a measure on what we are doing and how we are doing, and we can only improve what we can measure. So the tangible benefits are obviously the cost saving. So if we are doing recycling the wastewater, so we are definitely saving something on the water we purchase from, maybe water bills. If we are building electricity, so we are saving on that. Plus also complying with various legal compliances. In addition to that, a major benefit that comes out to be is what we call as intangible benefits. So it is basically on awareness, on how do we create awareness, have positive publicity, and especially in academic institution, the product is the students. In the end of the day, product is whatever knowledge we are sharing. So that's the essence of being an education institution, in my personal view. And I believe if we are able to change even 50% of the students to have a better lifestyle, being a better citizens, that would have achieved its purpose. And if some of them also become entrepreneurs or do whatever profession in later their lives, and which are also coincidentally developed dependent on eco-friendly activities, then that would be like icing on the cake. However, while we are designing a strategy for implementing green audits, environmental audits, compliances in any institution. So there are certain perceived negative aspects to it also, which is there might be partial disruption of regular activity while the audit is being carried out. The cost, because every audit, every exercise entails a financial cost, and this cost may be a additional expense to the institution. And of course, there could be a perception among the stakeholders, human resources, staff, students, other people associated, vendors, with any organization, that the audit maybe is a negative activity, is just to assess their performance or to burden them with additional load. So these are the certain perceived negative disadvantages. However, we have to, for every audit to get succeed or every activity to get succeed, I would say awareness and participation is the most important thing. And only with these activities is that the perceived disadvantages will get negated off. So let me just come to our next point on what does green audit basically includes. So it has been told by the Honorable Principal that there have been several initiatives already taken in the campus, which includes rainwater harvesting, waste management, cleanliness drives, solar. All these things are a part of audit activities. Now, but if we have to take it into a holistic way and look at into in a very systematic way, so all these elements will be becoming our baseline studies. So it's like saying we are here and we have done all of this, and these are the next steps we have to achieve. And how do we measure that? That comes a part of audit, that comes a part of green audit. So if it is water, we talk about rainwater harvesting. If we have covered X area, let us cover X more area. Same for energy. We can also progress into transport and procurement. So there would be construction activity going on, small, major activity in any institution. That could be done in a more sustainable way. That could also lead to something called GRIHA ratings. GRIHA is a national standard on green ratings. There's an international standard also on green ratings, which is called LEED, L-E-E-D, that the institute can avail, which would entail lots of soft and other benefits. The institute can go to zero waste, but all this combined together would come basically in an assessment on what is the baseline study on and how we can actually go on improving it and getting the benefits. And last but not the least, the most important I will touch about is something called low impact development. So like I said in the beginning, if any institution has not done much activity, for them doing a little elements, waste management, composting, rainwater, all the other miscellaneous elements, which I call elements, are a good thing. But an institution or an organization which has already done a lot of progress in individual elements, so the next step progression is how to integrate them and to get synergistic benefit of several activities. So in this term is technically called it's called low impact development. So so in this presentation, I would I've rather decided in my thoughts that I would share my opinion more on low impact development, because it entails all the basic elements on how we can go for a development which doesn't impact the environment. So low impact development in very, I will come to it, in very simple terms is a development module wherein if suppose an institution or a building is not there, there would have been a natural environment, a forest or a landscape there, and now we have a human developed structure there, on how we can go and minimize the impact in every way possible. How do we do that? So this I would rather touch to it. But before I do that, this is a very important thing that I would like to share, that whenever the institute wishes to go ahead with the audit process, it has to understand it is not just a study or not just a document, it is a living document, I would say, which is continuously evolving and upgrading itself. So if today is my baseline of some particular problems and we go on improving it, so then that is a continuous process which we have to do regularly after every year by year. And with every development, the sophistication increases. Sophistication both in terms of, for example, earlier we were talking about individual elements. Now I am talking about how to integrate the various elements together and focus on something new. So that is, so this is a very essential thing which is called a living thing and a revolving document. So coming back to my basic thing, what I referred to is low impact development in this slide. So let me just explain. It's a very latest concept of low impact development coming to the country and already being started at several places. And how is it? What are the principles? How the techniques and implementation? The question is, someone can come and say that we have done so many activities. What is the need of becoming more eco-friendly? We already have done this, that. What else more we can do? There's nothing more we can do. Well, I would say in certain ways our conventional strategies aren't working. This is when suppose there's an excessive rainfall and the water runs off as storm water runoff. So there will be lots of storm water problems, erosions, drainage problems, both inside the campus and outside. Who's responsible for that? It's a social issue in the end of the day. There's loss of community character, so that's very important. So if the leader of the institution is a very pioneering person, like it is in this case, but people are good, that's fine. But till the time the things are put into a system, so the community will not get attached to it in a non-independent way, in a non-person dependent way. So that will lead to possible loss of community character. And otherwise, it's also called the cost of development. So let me just put it in a simple context. If we are making a building, maybe another wall in the university, or maybe another building in a college or a parking lot, so there's a cost to the development. So agreed, we pay money and we buy cement, we buy sand, we buy wood, we buy bricks and all the other things possible on earth. But I don't know if many of people have thought what is the ecological impact of anything. Let's say a brick. It's called a life cycle cost. A brick is made far off somewhere using a clay mud from somewhere and then transported using a vehicle which is emitting a pollution and then coming up and then you use then we use air conditioners to cool the building. So that's a part of subtle cost of the development. So when we talk about low impact development, next imperative on how can we minimize this. So there are some problems we are facing. So to address these problems, the new strategy which has been started, it's called low impact development. So obviously, like I shared it with you in the beginning as well, nothing is rocket science, nothing is formalic, and it's basic. So we just need to understand how we are living our life and things to that. So basically, low impact development is a comprehensive landscape-based approach to sustainable development. So everything is part of sustainable development, rainwater, this, that. But once we have a comprehensive development approach, that our complete campus should work like a single unit and be more sustainably developed. If it is already developed, then how can we approach it to become a sustainable developed area? That is something which we call as low impact development. There are a set of strategies to maintain the existing natural systems, hydrology, ecology. So let me put it in a way that if there is a building that you are constructing at any location, and if there earlier when there was not a building, there must have been a soil, there must have been a garden, there must have been trees, there must have been insects, butterflies, and all those things. So how can we still maintain to the best possible limit? How can we still maintain the natural system and have a development also possible at the same time without disturbing the same? So these are the set of strategies I'm talking about. Natural system. Same for ecology. We have gardens, we have lots of open areas, and then we bring water out from there, water from a tube well and bore well, and then irrigate it. So that, I would say, that's not something natural, that's something artificial. So when we talk about low impact development, it's basically being can't we have plants which grow without a daily requirement of water? Can't we have natural gardens? Now, can't we have natural rain gardens or biospheres, things like this? So It's a cost-effective approach I've seen, but the only thing, it has to be approached in a systematic way. So like I told, it's a summary slide, but I will come to the details later on. So basically, it's an eco-conscious, being eco-conscious approach on management. So integrated everything together, say green roofs, rain gardens, stormwater things, swales, bioswales, rain gardens, so everything integrated together, and how does it operate. That's something what we call as low impact development. Coming to the before I just continue further, so is there anyone who would like to ask any questions, or just have some discussions, or am I going too fast, am I going slow? Please let me know. Okay.
Sir, I think the pace is just fine, and we are absorbing all the information that you are giving.
Okay, sounds perfect. So thank you. So basically, let me just move ahead. So basically, I will be outlining the principles of LID, which I call is a short form of low impact development. On what is low impact development, why do we need it, principles, benefits, implementations, and conventional strategies. So basically, question arises, why do we need low impact development? Though I have talked about it earlier also, but it's just an active thing. So if we have a area which is developed, which has paved, which is concreted area, so after that the natural system of water flow, evaporation, infiltration, everything gets disturbed. So that's a problem we are facing. We have to undo it. Question is, how do we undo it? So that's one of the answers we can solve. Similarly, we have large parking lots. We have roads made of asphalt, bitumen, and other things. How can we minimize the impact for that? We have systems where we make drainage lines, we make runoffs, and this water passes on through the drainage pipes and then collects at one location. So, and then there is something called algae bloom, overflow, erosions, and all those things happening. So this is something called pipe and pond strategies. So how can we minimize pipe and pond strategies and reduce flooding, have a natural ecosystem in our gardens and things like this? So the main principle of LID is using the existing natural system as the integrating framework for the site planning. So if it is a new site, it's obviously relatively easier. If it is an old site, then obviously it's a little challenging, but it's a natural progression to the next step if we have to be more eco-friendly and green. So this goes on, how do we go on land use planning, intershed, or this, where is our walking area, campus areas, where is our wetland, trees, buildings, hydrology, and understanding how is that development envelope like. The idea is to basically have prevention. So so we are basically talking, I will be talking about something, but it has a very large thing aspect to it. So we are basically talking about how we can optimize our road widths, parking areas to actually manage water and environment much better. How can we use our roofs to manage our buildings better? And same for waste. How can we go from composting or waste recycling to waste reduction? So prevention, what we call, so zero waste. So these are this is the basic principle. How do we move towards prevention? So this is one of the examples you must have seen. So there's a parking lot, and water comes on the parking lot. It's generally it's a paved area, a concrete area, and so there can be small planters where you can micromanage the runoff. So that will both help the city that the runoff has reduced, but it will also help the institution, and it can also be an academic factor to teach students of maybe engineering or biology or chemistry who have a relevant subject, and how these small features can be integrated. So a small bioswale, no natural plantation done around the parking in a designed way, in an engineered way, will actually be helping to reduce the pollution load. So likewise, if we are having a drainage system, we can improve it in a particular way. I'm just going a little more quickly. And this is a very important slide. So in a way, if you are able to see, there's a building, yellow, orange, yellowish color building, and there's a small garden patch. So this is something called they call it a multifunctional landscape, but it is also called a rain garden. So like I talked about it again earlier, we have gardens where we are watering from water from outside. Let us have a rain gardens, which also has a natural thing and which can also have plants and suitable varieties which can grow on itself. So not exotic varieties, something which are more native and things like this. And idea should be to reduce the heat island effect. And once you reduce the heat island effect, the energy consumption of your building of your will also come down. So heat island effect is basically a factor that a particular area, due to the development happened, the temperature of that area has increased. So suppose we have an area, we cut our trees and the temperature will increase. So we can reduce a heat island effect from suitable landscaping strategies. So that's part of our LID principles as well. And likewise, once we are talking about reducing use of pesticide and fertilizer, so it is something called the circular system, circular. So we are making a compost, we are recycling it, and we are reusing it. And this comes to a circular system on how we are using it. This can be very good for the organization, but also a learning opportunity for the people involved, who, the students, the teachers, and even others. So these are more engineering aspects regarding that, like conservation. How do we go? I will just try to skip out things. So basically, once we are talking about green audits, so a green audit would also entail one of the factors that what is your current baseline, like I talked about. So what all work has been done, that becomes your baseline study, and what all you need to do. Once we talk about what all we need to do, we would be knowing, we would be requiring information on what all features we have in the institution. Like we have to identify, let's say it's a residential area, or it's a commercial area, or it's an institutional area. We have to identify the conservation areas where we can do our interventions. Maybe gardens, maybe buildings, maybe energy, maybe water, and then locate the relevant sites where we have to do the roads and the trail, how the walking paths happen, how the natural walking, and then integrate it into a systematic plan. And based upon the systematic plan, we have to optimize whatever best we can optimize our developed structures. If we can optimize our developed structures, good. If we cannot do them, then we have to go around them in some way or the other way. Then once we have our developed structures, we have to identify how the water is flowing, how the sunlight is moving here and there, and accordingly we will have to create our micro watersheds. We have to create our sunspots, we have to create our waste spots, and identify the most suitable location on how to integrate the campus as a one entity as far as being eco-friendly is concerned. So, and then once we have that, we have to have solutions on strategies on how we can become more water efficient, more solar efficient, and all those things. So one of the thing is that like this is a slightly an engineering drawing, but it basically says that it's just the purpose of putting this slide in the presentation was just to give an idea that even the minor things which we sometimes don't care about, but they affect on being eco-friendly or non-eco-friendly. So if there is a turn in our road, even in a small circle, if there is in a college, that does also affect the flow of water, the flow of waste that comes on the water on the road accidentally, on everything. So how does it move to the ground and to the soil? So that can be optimized to have a more better and eco-friendly things. Optimizing of parking lots, that's also a solution to do that. And the how do we manage within concrete flooring or a natural flooring? All these minor things matter. And like it is shown in the drawing, that whatever parkings are there, then accordingly we'll have to manage how the runoff will work, how the plantations will go, what will plantations will happen. So all this is part of being a natural thing. Again, coming back to the second thing of strategy, it is called bioretention. So retention is a very important factor in a way, retention of soil, retention of water, retention of plants as well, natural plants. So designing the open areas in such a way, the natural bioretention of the landscape happens in an efficient way. So next thing, what can be done as part of strategy is having a vegetative swale, or technically what it is called is a bioswale. So bioswale is a landscape feature. It looks like another garden or another grass plantation, but it is, I would say, an intelligent garden which absorbs the runoff, which also absorbs, filters the water, which naturally have natural plantation, even cleans dirty water, and it is naturally sustainable. So these are called bioswales, and they can be a very important component of the open landscape area of the campus. So filter strips are also part of bioswales that can be done. Infiltration trenches and dry wells are part of recharging your groundwater table. I'm sure the institute has done rainwater harvesting. So, well, this might have been an activity which has already been done in the campus. So this can be done, and then something very important that we can really go about is green roofs. So green roofs are a very good feature to not only grow plantation on your roofs and concrete areas, but it would also help in reducing electricity load in particularly the summer months, because once your roof is cool, the building will remain naturally cool, and the heating and the use of air conditioners and other things will obviously get decreased. And little vegetables or whatever little things can also be grown inside in a more activity oriented way. So this is how we can go about doing it, and this is something very important. So basically, once we are able to do all of that, we will be able to hydrologically, this is one way I have shown in this slide, it's hydrologically, but we can connect it in any way, hydrologically, aeration way, bio way, and different ways your entire element will get connected, and the complete unit or the campus will function as one single unit in a more sustainable way. And there can be a measurable quantifiable parameters which can be measured year on year on how well the institute is doing as far as environment is concerned. So these are some of the hypothetical graphs based on some other data on how, based upon LID and conventional things, the rainwater discharges comes down in a particular hours, and how the pollution can reduce in various areas, and with lots of things, though it won't be so relevant in this context, but in other context, obviously there is obviously cost savings involved for every activity that we do, maybe zero waste and other things. So but we have to take into consideration that everything is done as per the climate, location, who will be operating it, whether students will be doing it, whether it will be a public activity. So all this needs to be done. Who will maintain it? So all this, once it's done up, so we can have a proper strategy, which can also be part of your auditing recommendation outcome, and that can go ahead both as short-term strategy, long-term strategy, and gradually we can also have a more better compliance with laws and codes, because in the next 5 to 10 years more stricter and more better eco-friendly rules will be coming out, and we can obviously adhere it to them. So said this, I think I would like to conclude the presentation, and if there are any discussions, so that would be very welcome. And coming back to the point, I would just say that the institute has done a lot of good activities. I think what it essentially requires is measuring all of that and having a baseline and having a joint vision or mission that this is what we need to achieve, and how do we go about it, and how do we integrate the different things in a holistic way. And I would suggest, in my professional opinion, that the institute can go ahead with a strategy called low impact development, because in my opinion it is the next imperative step that is possible, and it will also have a multiplier effect with what all has been already done and what all can be done. So with this I would like to conclude today's presentation, and thank you so much to everyone, and if there are any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gaurav, for your such an enlightening talk. And now I would invite the students as well as the faculty to ask questions to our resource person. You have already heard him. Now you can have your queries cleared from him. Thank you. As I've already mentioned, the students can put their questions in the chat box or they may ask indirectly. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
So there was a mention of rain barrels in the presentation.
Can you come again?
So there was a mention of rain barrels.
Yes.
Could you please elaborate it?
Okay. See, once I talk about rainwater harvesting, so basically there are two ways on how you can do rainwater harvesting. One way of harvesting water is technically it's called groundwater recharge, which has been done in your institute. So it's basically collecting the water and putting it inside the water table, inside the earth again, recharging the groundwater table. There is a second way of doing rainwater harvesting, is actually storing the water and then recycling and reusing it for your daily activity. So that can be done in an institutional way, and that can be done in a small micro way. So once you do it in a macro way or institutional way, so the institute can make a collection tank and collect all the campus water in one tank and then recycle it for any use, maybe drinking, gardening or something else. But rain barrels are small storage structures, maybe 500 liters, 1000 liters, that can be put up in in the corner of the buildings or any collection areas, and the water can be stored, and that water can be used for gardening, just like that. It can be just put below the pipes, and that can be used. So rain barrels are small micromanaged storage tanks which can be used in a very participatory way. Does that clear your doubt?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gaurav, I would. Sorry, Beta, you can ask. Please carry on.
Okay, ma'am. Sir, can you please tell more about the green boxes that were mentioned?
Green boxes related to what?
So there was a mention like they prevent the storm water, like initial storm water. So yes.
So basically, this is a very interesting topic. In fact, a lot of students can actually go into this. This is coming up in India in a big time way, especially after smart cities concepts have come into the country. We all are aware about waste management. So there are dustbins kept everywhere, our houses, hotels, everywhere. But I'm sure none of us have actually bothered on what happens to the drain waste. And if you realize, the 90% of the waste is not generated in the dustbin. It is generated in the road. So some person is going and throwing his toffee wrapper on the road. Some person is spitting. People are taking, sorry, without any offenses to anyone, but people are taking their dogs out on the streets and they are pooing on the road. And who is responsible? So it's going again to our waterways and coming back. So these what you're talking about, green boxes. So these are what I talked about, green boxes. It is also something called stormwater filters. So they are installed in the drainage periodically, and they clean the stormwater naturally. So your kachra, your grease, your oils, your plastic things, they can be screened off. So green boxes is a more more catchy word. The technical word to it is stormwater filters. So that can be done more at an institutional level, at any level, and that will be very helpful. And I have also got another. Does that answer your question, by the way? Help.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
And there is also one question I have got in a message just now. What is the link between green roofs and electricity consumption? So, well, I will just like to elaborate on it. Green roof is, so we all live in some kind of house, and most of the house that we all live in today are concrete RCC house, cement house is what we call about. And if you have noticed that the roof of our house, what we call terrace, gets heated during the sunny day, and that heat gets transmitted into our inner rooms. And once it gets transmitted into our inner rooms, we have ACs and things like this, which cool our buildings down. So let me just put it. Have we ever wondered how people 500 years back, so many years back, used to live in Delhi and other places which were very hot, and there were no air conditioners and things like that at that time. So basically, once we make green roof, what happens? There is a radiation effect. So if sunlight is falling to the roof, at least 50 to 60% will get absorbed and radiated back, because there will be natural cooling. You will grow plants or some kind of natural things over your roof, so it will give a cooling effect, and then the essential average ambient temperature of your house will decrease, which will also decrease the energy load. So if you are running your ACs maybe for more hours, you would do it for less hours, especially for institutions. It is more important that, and it's very practical as well, I guess, for them, that they have large campuses. If they are able to have green roofs and greenery, the overall ambient temperature would come down, and with particular solar passive building strategies, the requirement of ACs would be actually be eliminated. So does that answer you a little? Because I can go to more details, but sorry. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, in general, what level of maintenance do low impact development practices need?
Very less. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Very less, negligible, I would say, because, hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because, see, you just need to understand that it's the easiest way to live is to live your way. So, and your way, once we talk in a natural way, is being eco-friendly. It's a more natural way. So once we are talking about these strategies, like let us say we are talking about say zero waste strategies, and so let me answer your question in a more generic context. So, but if we are trying to achieve a zero waste concept, and in zero waste concept we decide that we will actually grow some of our vegetables in our kitchen garden every day, even if that's one single vegetable. So just imagine, and gradually we increase the scale. We would not even have to go technically to the market to buy vegetables, ideally talking. So there's no maintenance, right? If you go to the market, you spend your time, you waste your car, you waste your parking fees and all those, and come, and it's so on and so forth for everything. And once we are talking about landscaping things, you talk about golf courses and gardens. These are really very expensive things which any organization does or develops. But if we do natural plantations, okay, it doesn't ask you anything. So so obviously it's not something, it just has to be natural. So it will be very negligible as compared to conventional strategies. It would not be much cost.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But it would involve, I would add, in the institution, it would involve community participation and awareness is the very important thing that should be required. It's not like something you can call another contractor or an expert or a teacher or someone from outside and he or she can do the thing. It can only succeed and it can only happen if with teamwork and involvement. Otherwise, things would fail.
But as we mentioned, stormwater filter, that thing, that too cost, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't cost anything.
No. See, uh, obviously, see, there is always a cost to something. It's not like you don't have a cost to something. Let me just put it in another way. Even if you are sitting in this lecture right now, or I am sitting in this lecture, or all of us are sitting in this, there's an opportunity cost. So if we would not have been sitting in this discussion, we would have been doing some other activity, playing, studying, job, some other. So it obviously cost to something. If we are buying a metal from somewhere, so there is, but what we are talking in this cost is in reference to the baseline or a conventional strategy. So right now our strategy is doing nothing, right? So if we do something, then it's always better. So if you, so let me say you have a house and you are like, you put a stormwater filter for say X rupees. So you would say, I have no return to it. So obviously you won't have return to it. But if you are seeing it in a larger perspective, let us talk about an institutional perspective. So they are doing something and they are saving something in more intangible way maybe. So that's also an achievement. So things are not always in terms of cost, but in terms of other features as well, right? But as compared to conventional, the costings are obviously very less.
Okay, sir. Good
Is there
afternoon,
any-
everyone.
Hello?
Yes, Beta, please quickly ask your question. I think it's
Good
quite
Okay,
yes.
ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Sir, I guess all my fellow friends have asked a lot of from your presentation, and I'm also very glad that I have got this opportunity to attend the presentation. It was very, very knowledgeable for all of us. I have a question, but we cannot say it as a question. I just wanted to ask you, like we have been grown in a city. I am a resident of the Tri-City, and we are very well aware of our surroundings. We have so many implements that our government has been taking, like we have garbages, dustbins which we need to maintain according to the type of the garbage and all those things. But when we talk about our that backward India, still there are many villages who do not think that it's very beneficial for us to have garbages. They just keep throwing. Even in many villages there are dumping grounds in between the residents of the villagers. They are being throwing those things, and it is polluting the air, the water, and the soil as well associated to it. So sir, because you are linked with this field, can you just help us that how can we aware them that you shouldn't do this? Because if we say तो वो कह देते हैं तुम बच्चे हो तुम मत बोलो ऐसा ही है चलता रहेगा, but it's not a thing, it's a thing to be concerned about.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. But before I begin, I have a very decent answer to this, and will really appreciate it. But I will share it from one of my experiences very long time back. After BITS, I was also in IIT Kanpur, and there we used to have open book exams. And in one of the exam, talking somewhere around 12-15 years back, so in one of the exams we didn't know the answer. Then we asked a boy sitting next to me, and he was like, go to the basics and we'll figure out. So the answer to your question is go to the basics. The problem is that all of us have so it's a very larger discussion, more than you and me can finish in this 10 minutes talk, but it's more on the complete global economy. We are actually we are not actually going to our basics. If you see, our traditional villages or even our small cities are a very sustainable law. So we have a very circular economy. What you call rag pickers, they are not just rag pickers, they are actually a part of recycling your waste economy. Okay, so and same for same things. Right now, the saddest part is we are purchasing. If you are traveling to any part of the world for holiday, suppose you go to Uttarakhand for a holiday, and you would end up buying even a water bottle for 20 rupees. You would end up buying a milk packet, coconut, or any other thing, whatever you can talk about. So we are buying everything, and then every buying entails waste and everything. The problem is that we have broken our natural system, which was prevalent through thousands of years, particularly in an Indian context. So to come back to your question, the best thing that what you can do at your level is that you can, awareness is obviously one point, but the second, if you really want to have a lasting impact, find ways and means so that the circular economy of that area can be regenerated. So if you're talking about a basti or some village or some other area, you have to target something and generate, like I told in my starting sentence, that till the time something is not sustainable, it won't survive. Sustainability is also on environment, it's also on social, and it's also on economics. So you need to bring a system that generates a value to the people. So once you're able to do that, obviously people will adopt and there would be an improvement.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I think Gaurav has answered quite a number of questions, but yes, one last question. Ma'am has been waiting for long. Mrs. Supreet Bhatia has a question for you, Gaurav. I think this would be the last question of the session. Ma'am, sorry, because students were coming, so I could not just...
Not at all, Gunjan. Thank you so much. And sir, thank you so much for such a brilliant presentation. We have collected a wealth of information, which we are going to utilize in our institution's progress. I have two questions. One is that in one of the slides, there was this comment that increase the time of concentration. Kindly elaborate what does that mean and how is it to be done? Increase the time of concentration.
Okay, and what is your second question, pardon?
The second question is that where we were talking, the slide that said treat stormwater close to the source. There, one thing was mentioned that use open drainage. So is open drainage recommended in these days, sir? That was my question.
Okay, I will just have to see in what context that was written, increased time of concentration. So, but okay, basically, I will just check it out because it's written in, but let me just come back to your second question and then come back to your first question.
All right, sir.
Yeah, so basically when I referred to open and closed drainage, there are 2 points to that. Recently, let me just put one example. In the Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat just lately, he mentioned about a village in Panchkula which had a huge sewerage problem, and they developed a 5-pond system or something, and then they were able to use that water for irrigation. Right. Without any external assistance. So the idea is so what I am just trying to say, you don't have to catch me in the word of it, open drainage. You will have to take my sentence in a holistic way. So a point is that open drainage is okay if you are having other elements of LID. There is natural greenery, plants that is handling the pollution, then it's fine. Even so it has to be seen in a context on how it, but if the drain is passing right below a classroom, obviously it cannot be an open drainage. That's logical. But if it is possible, it has to be open, because otherwise it can have a natural aeration and natural plants can treat it. So it has to be seen in a context. And as far as increased time of concentration, I have written, I just have to, basically what happens is that once we are this was written in terms of stormwater thing. So what happens is that once we have a so some girl asked about green boxes 5-10 minutes back. So yes, once we have a drain and we don't put filters into it, so suppose your college is there is a, I remember there's a nala going on the backside of your college.
Very right, sir.
Right. So suppose the water is coming from that location to the front of your gate. I'm just assuming something, I don't know about it exactly, but if there is water, so water is traveling say 200 meters of distance. So obviously by the time it starts and by the time it ends, that concentration would increase, right? What we have to do is decrease it, so for minimizing it, we will have to find ways and means on how we can do naturally. That way our drains will also choke, our overall maintenance will come up. So basically I would not like to go into much details, and neither I have gone into much details. My only overview of the presentation was that your institution has done some lovely works in lots of activities, Swachhta, these things. Now is the time to look all of them together in a holistic way and find ways and means. Like I have a couple of years back, your building was being constructed near the entry gate. I'm not sure if it's been done or not, but ways and means to incorporate these principles in that. On how you can, one thing I would really like to emphasize is awareness and entrepreneurship. I think college is a place where students can get involved, and some of them can actually have a entrepreneurship career in something related with environment. So the idea was basically to look into things holistically,
right,
and Green Audit should be in that context.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I think we've had a very good question answer round, and now I may request Mrs. Mridula Sharma to please propose a vote of formal thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Gunjan. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, you are.
All right. So it has been a great learning experience today. And it has been said often that the proper use of science is not conquer nature, but to live in it. Indeed, the link between humans and nature ought to be revisited and refurbished. Green audit at both personal and organizational levels is the pressing need of the present times. The various multi-level, cost-effective strategies discussed by Mr. Gaurav Raja Prakash, which ensure development while maintaining the existing natural systems, are practically viable and must be emulated to secure a better future for the generations to come. On behalf of Chand Mahajan DAV College for Women and the IQAC, I extend a heartfelt thanks to our expert today, Mr. Gaurav Raja Prakash, partner, the Ridge Environment Consultants and UNESCO award-winning environmentalist. We are beholden to you, sir, for elucidating for us the overarching importance of sustainability and environment conservation. We look forward to your inputs and guidance in the future also. I would also express our gratitude to our principal, Dr. Nisha Bhargav, for her constant support and inspiration, which keep us always on the path of improving and reinventing ourselves. I also thank all the participants for joining us today for this very insightful discussion. Special thanks to the student participants for making this session interactive and even more interesting. With this, we come to the end of this event. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, nice day.